I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank you for being here. And as I said, for those who couldn't attend today, we are recording this, obviously, because you're watching a recording. We're here to talk about energy miners. And I think you're going to find this really exciting. The principal technology we'll be talking about is the Smart Phases NovaCab test, thermal energy storage system. And there are two other technologies which we may be referring to. One is the Sidel Systems USA SRU flue gas condenser, which catches the exhaust from boilers and from gas and coal power plants, and then takes the CO2 and water vapor and puts it either into a greenhouse or condensation and compression station. There's a third technology that comes to us from our partners in India, and what that is a rotating particulate collector which catches the other pollutants that would be coming out of a stack at a coal plant or a biomass plant or wood boilers, anything like that. So very exciting stuff. And why do we call it energy miners? Well, the world spent about $12 trillion on energy in 2025, and over 6 trillion of that energy, money, by the way, was lost as rejected energy, heat or cold, thermal energy. And if you look at what could be done, we're able to convert thermal energy to electricity as low as about 49, 50 degrees centigrade, so it's 122 Fahrenheit. For utility scale photovoltaics, we can catch the heat those panels are catching and store it and convert it into 40% more electricity, which they can deploy at night. I think that's pretty amazing. And for gas and coal power plants, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but generally energy consumers are going to reduce their energy costs by about 25 to 30. Start again. All right. First of all, I want to welcome everybody today to Energy Miners 101. We'll talk about why that's Energy Miners here in just a minute. The concept is combining technologies in a proper way with existing opportunities to reduce the energy consumption. And why do we need to do that? Well, it's a pretty glaring problem. In 2025, we spent about $12 trillion on energy in all of its forms. And over 6 trillion of that energy, think of it as money, was rejected as thermal energy, which is heat or cold. So, proven technologies. One is the Smart Phases NovaCab test, thermal energy storage system. This captures thermal energy from minus 40 to over 800 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 460 C. We're able to dial that storage temperature in to within 2 degrees of project specificity using various organic and inorganic substances that are non-toxic, non-carcinogenic to create basically giant ice cubes. And ice, as it melts, stores thermal energy. You drop an ice cube in a glass of tea, it melts, it's basically storing thermal energy. You want to store more thermal energy, put it on the stove, 212 Fahrenheit, 100 C, it expands 1,600 times and becomes steam. That's called a phase change material. The NovaCab tests thermal energy storage system uses a synthetic phase change material. Again, it's environmentally benign, it's non-toxic, non-carcinogenic, and we have documentation for that. So what we do is we answer this wasted thermal energy, this wasted money, with power. And we reduce energy consumption for commercial industrial consumers by 20 to 35%. And if we're talking power generators, we can increase their output by 25 to 40%. This is the test. So I mentioned ice a little bit earlier. You see the blocks of ice in the 1 megawatt test stores 3.5 million BTUs. There's copper tubing that runs through this programmed ice. And then you can see the converters, which are organic Rankine cycle engines. Each of those are able to put out 350 kW, total 700 kW. And if we have the thermal energy to back it up, we can do that 8760 all year long. You can see on the inside how the organic Rankine cycle engine works. There's a pool of thermal SPCM, and as it reaches the temperature of the underlying stored thermal energy, it expands as is programmed by the controller. It expands, drives the microturbines, recondenses, and drops in to the storage pool again. So these are modular. That's pretty exciting when you think about how many of these. Roughly price on these right now is about $1.8 million. They will last for decades with nominal maintenance. Amazing piece of technology. The NovaCap test technology, more than 400 batteries deployed across Canada in generation 1 through 4. We're now in the middle of doing a global launch, which includes a couple of projects already in the ground here in the US, an African nation power grid. The nation of India wants to have a manufacturing plant over there because of the work that we'll do for them, and I'll dig into that a little bit more as we get moving. So putting the pictures that you just saw into words, the thermal energy storage system receives thermal energy from available sources: exhaust, hot water, steam, thermal oil, solar heat, engine heat, or other industrial processes. And a heat transfer fluid and a heat exchanger brings that thermal energy into the test. And that ice is by mixture programmed to melt, thereby storing those BTUs at that project-specific temperature. And we can, again, work to within 2 degrees of the project specifications, from -40 to 460 C, which is roughly 800 degrees Fahrenheit, and actually a little higher than that. And the thermal energy can be restored to processes. It can be used as a buffer, or we can convert that thermal energy directly to electricity behind the meter. All right, so again, predictable power generation from 122F to above 800 degrees Fahrenheit. So I mentioned India. In May of this year, we were invited to come to India. I spoke at the Vasantdada Sugar Institute. We've done several studies on their sugar mills over there, which will begin doing sales and installs over there as we get a plant established there, which we're in the process of working on right now. We will cut the power consumption to those sugar mills by 20 to 30%. We will harvest a significant amount of rejected thermal energy, which will reduce their water consumption 40 to 60%, provide them with behind-the-meter electricity, and since we're able to control the thermal energy step down, and as I mentioned, buffering, will actually improve the quality of the sugar crystals, which is pretty good, especially when you consider that so many aisles in our supermarkets are full of sugar. So they want to have the best sugar possible. So a little bit just kind of about us. The NovaCap Thermal Energy Storage System won an ASHRAE Excellence in Engineering Award in 2005, for the first of the 5 IBM plant installations in Bromont, Canada. Amazing. It does exactly what we say. We had a major impact on their on the cooling side of the plant, a 45% impact, which translates into dollars. And as you can see, commercial buildings, even large ships. We're going to reduce their fuel consumption 9% for the ships and increase their kWh output. We are a huge, I just want to say this again, for gas and coal power plants. Depending on the design, we can make them near zero emissions, bring them close to 90% plant efficiency, reduce their fuel consumption by 9%, increase their megawatt hour output by 25%. This is amazing. And I know, what's in it for me? I'm going to get to that. I want to talk to you a little bit about the technology first so you can see. It's a battery. We're storing energy, but we're storing it as thermal energy, and we're able to convert it to thermal, either convert it to electricity, restore it to already existing thermal loops so they don't have to generate that thermal energy to begin with. What am I talking about? One of the installations in Canada is a hockey rink where we catch and store cold so they don't have to generate the cold to begin with. So as they need to pull on the cold for demand, they can pull it from the battery instead. Amazing technology. It works exactly as advertised. And as I said, award-winning. So power plants, again, here's a coal power plant. This is what can be done. The SRU flue condenser can catch the water vapor and CO2. The RPC, rotating particulate collector, can catch the other pollutants. We take the BTUs and we step that down from the multi-hundred degree temperatures down to about 100 degrees so it can go into that greenhouse. And by the way, where there's land for this available for power plants, they create an additional revenue stream in addition to reducing their carbon footprint, and they create economic development for the community that they're in and locally sourced food. And again, if there's not enough room for the commercial grade greenhouses, we can develop a condensation and compression station for the water vapor and CO2. This is what's expected in the plant in India. So roughly 500 sales, 895 million the first year, but over the next 3 years, over 13 billion in sales. Now, I want to talk a little bit about those sales. You see this 5,000 in the, I think is year 3, 2,000 in year 2. Let's kind of walk through those just a minute. Because if you can help us connect to one of these sources, then one of these potential clients, then this is what this means to you. Let's say you're helping us, and we'll have people helping us across India making these connections. But in India, those in that first year, that's $5 million worth of finder's fees off of those 500 units. Now, by the time we get to year 3, we're talking $50 million worth of finder's fees. I want to tell you, there are dairies, food processing plants, hospitals, data centers, power plants here in the United States that need this, and in Canada, and in Europe, and in Africa, and in Asia, that need this technology. You or someone you know will connect us to that opportunity. And I'll tell you what that means to you. I just mentioned it. 5 million just from the sales in India in finder's fees in 2027. So get ready, get ready, get ready. You can start earning some of that right now. And I'm going to wrap this up and then talk a little bit more about money. We are a green technology. We're the first proven cogeneration in a box that can work at the temperatures I've already described you, from minus 40 to to over 460 degrees centigrade. I'll correct that here. It's 800 Fahrenheit. I forgot to catch that on there, but the editing never stops. That's how effective we are. And if we have 2 plants up and operational, we can produce $7 billion worth of product a year. That's amazing. That's in the neighborhood of the 4,000, so $40 million in finder's fees per year. We do have one plant operating in the United States right now. It is a contract construction facility for us, but as we move to mass production, we can produce as many as 160 of the 1 megawatt tests per month. So that's the end, but I want to let you hear something from Dr. Bilodeau himself. No, it won't play on this. I apologize. I'll send it to you. I'll send the whole PowerPoint show to you as a link so you can watch that in addition to the video. I'm going to stop sharing right now and talk about how you do this. You or someone you know has access to the person who makes decisions at the local hospital, the local refinery, or a power plant across the country that you happen to know. Your Uncle Bob runs the place there. You have to talk about this. And the way you talk about this is $10,000 checks in your pocket. I'm not kidding. Every 1 megawatt test, a $10,000 finder's fee check will be issued. So here's the process. Not asking you for money. That's going to change in October, but not for anybody who registers as an energy miner now. Anybody who registers as an energy miner between now and October the 1st, no monthly fees, no subscription fees, none of that. You won't have to pay any of that. It's all opportunity unfolding before you. Now, if you see a bigger opportunity and you want to buy in, that's your choice, but we are not going to ask you for any money. After October 1st, there will be subscription fees. So you make the connection. Let's say it's your neighbor that knows the hospital administrator. In hospitals, especially, you got 400, 500, 600 beds or more. Those are running 24/7. They have big power bills, big water bills, and very, very, very skinny profit margins. So we can have a huge impact for them. But you make the connection, and what happens then is that we do an engineering study at no cost to the hospital, overseen by a licensed professional engineer. Our chief engineer, Mark Thomas, is working on his PhD, has a master's in mechanical engineering. He'll do the study. We'll present it to the decision makers. They purchase it, or they lease it, or an energy as a service company buys it for them and puts it on site and puts a meter on it. You get a $10,000 check for every one of those 1 megawatt test units. That's how it works. Now, what I hope to do is help you figure out how to best network. Now, I talked to one of you recently, and you used to work in refineries. We did a study on a LyondellBasell refinery where we'll reduce their grid demand by 10%. That is massive for them. And with 10 of our 1 megawatt units on site, by the way, that's 100,000 in finder's fees, they'll have a 60 megawatt hour black start backup battery on site, so that if a hurricane or Arctic front knocks their power out, they can shut the plant down properly, which saves them a bunch of money, and eventually will even impact their insurance. And then, to support the local grid, they can sell that stored power back to the grid and stabilize the local grid. That, my friend, my refinery friend, that's what we can do. All you need to do is set them, and how do you get this thing going? Your friend next door, they'd like to know more before they introduce. Well, you can show them this recording, or you can set up a time to meet with me personally. I'll be happy to do that. And then we meet with the hospital director, the refinery director, the steel mill chief engineer, the refinery chief engineer, whoever it is. We do our presentation. We gather data. Mark does the study. Now I want to take you to the stratosphere. I'm also a sales guy, in addition to being president of the company. In fact, anybody in the company can be a sales guy. I have, over the last several months, in fact, about 8 months, been developing an African national power grid that's interested in our technology. We just completed studies on 6 of their gas power plants. They need $920 million worth of just the test technology. That's including installation and shipping, about 756 million in product. But if we're looking at it from the standpoint of finder's fees, that's $40 million in finder's fees. I'm sorry, $4 million in finder's fees. They're getting, that'll be about 400 of our 1 megawatt units, 4 million in finder's fees. I'm the sales guy. I promise you, I'm making more than $10,000 per battery. This is an opportunity. Opportunities only have value if one picks it up. I can write you $1 million check, and I would be delighted to do that, but it needs to be based on finder's fees. I can write it all out. I can sign it. I can hold it out to you, but it doesn't become yours until you take it, receive it. This is an opportunity. I've extended the opportunity to you. Become an energy miner. No money out of your pocket. It's intriguing to you. You want to learn more? Great. We'd love to have the opportunity to take you to that place where $10,000 checks are coming to you on a regular basis. Now, in closing, I want to just share with you, I'm a fiscally conservative environmentalist. I don't think you should spend money on renewable energy technology just because it's renewable energy technology. I think you should spend money on something because it's having an impact on your bottom line and it's having an impact on the environment. So I asked Stefan, who's also an environmentalist who consults with the United Nations and the Department of Energy, I asked him, what happens if we get this around the world in all the vertical markets? And he said, well, we'll roll back the climate damage that's been done by wasting over half the energy we buy and pumping it in hundreds of degrees up into the atmosphere. We'll reduce our global energy consumption by about a third, and will return $1 trillion a year to the global economy. Hence the name energy miners. That $6 trillion we lost in 2025 that was wasted is a gold mine. We have the mining equipment, and we're not even charging you for it. Are you in? If so, send me an email after you've taken the time to listen to this. I want to thank those who were able to attend today, and I'm looking forward to more. I will set up another meeting. I'm going to experiment with times. I'm going to do some off hours, like late in the day type meetings. And for the early birds, I'll do some early bird type meetings. So that way, hopefully we'll fit in your schedule. So 1 to 2 meetings a week. If you can attend, great. If you can't attend, send me an email and say, I'm in, and I'll make sure you get the recordings. Thank you very much.